The courtroom was tense and filled with resentment. At the center of the storm stood Mr. Washington, a man desperate to escape the weight of responsibility. He called it a mistake, but there was someone else who had a stake in this battle. Mr. Washington's fiancée, Ms. Colmer.
Mr. Washington, you say the defendant, Ms. Steinhardt, was a two-night stand that went too far. And as a result, she's claiming you fathered her 3-month-old daughter, Amaya. Your fiancé, Ms. Colmer, says your relationship is in turmoil because of Ms. Steinhardt, and you're both desperate to prove you are not the father.
However, Ms. Steinhardt had a very different version of events. To her, this wasn't a fleeting moment of carelessness. It was a relationship, a planned pregnancy, a future. And now, she was here to prove that the child she carried for 9 months belonged to him.
Ms. Steinhardt, it is your testimony that you and Mr. Washington were in a relationship and planned to have this child together. You say you have no doubt that Mr. Washington is the father.
Washington, however, painted a vastly different picture. He claimed that his encounter with Ms. Steinhardt was nothing more than a brief lapse, a misguided response to a heated argument with his fiancée, Colmer. According to him, their time together had been nothing more than a spur-of-the-moment mistake, and his fiancée backed him up.
Mr. Washington, why do you think Ms. Steinhardt is trying to pin a child on you?
Because we had a little thing going on a couple months ago, because me and my fiance got into a little argument.
Well, the real reason is because she just wants my family.
Right from the beginning, the court can feel the heat. This promises to get even more intense. Judge Lauren managed to calm them down, at least temporarily. She wanted to know how all these things started.
Well, me and my fiance got into a little disagreement, and then I was staying at a friend's house, and I met Teresa over there.
All right.
He asked me if I was seeing anyone. I said no. I asked him the same question also. I said, are you seeing anyone? He said no.
No, that's a lie, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Colmer is standing strong by her man and is ready to protect what's hers. She's not here to play. Ms. Steinhardt, on the other hand, maintained that she and Washington had been in a relationship, a passionate, albeit short-lived affair that she believed was genuine and meant to be. But how did she find out that he was in a relationship?
Basically, we was walking to the store and she was yelling from the other side of the block, like, oh, I see you.
And then I said, oh, I see y'all over there. Then they started walking like this. They out, running, ghost.
You need to stay behind.
Sorry, but they was out, they was ghosts, nowhere to be found.
Ms. Steinhardt should maybe take a few more steps to the left, just for her safety. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as she laid out her case, how she and Mr. Washington had spent months together, how he had introduced her to his family, how he had made promises. She didn't hesitate when the judge asked if they had been intimate. Yes, they were together, for months, without protection more often than not. And now, with their daughter in her arms, he wanted to act like it never happened?
So you were in a relationship in your mind?
That says
was never in a relationship.
Let me see those pictures, please.
All those
Never in a
pictures I already
relationship.
seen. I seen them through Facebook.
Y'all taking little pictures together?
Right, on the
I have
bus.
Wasn't in
way
a
more than
relationship,
that.
though.
And another picture that looks like you all booed up.
The judge, ever the voice of reason, tried to rein in the verbal sparring, but the insults flew like daggers. Mr. Washington's defense was flimsy at best. His story wavered. First, it was a short fling, then a 2-month affair, then 3. He swore he had always used protection, except when he didn't. But Ms. Colmer wasn't here to pick apart his inconsistencies. She had already made up her mind.
Or how did you find out about the pregnancy?
All right, I found out through social media. She posted all those pictures that you have here with a picture of a pregnancy test on the social media page and said, oh, my baby father.
It was clear that Mr. Washington's relationship was built on a crumbling foundation of lies. Ms. Steinhardt told the court that Mr. Washington had been telling everyone that she was pregnant with his baby, but Mr. Washington denied having such conversations. And then his defender swooped in.
Because not once have I ever heard that came out from his mouth and from his friends telling me that he said anything like that in that nature.
Because he doesn't want to tell you
But why would
anything
the friends
because
lie
he's
for
scared of
him?
you.
Those friends keep it a buck and tell me they see you walking with him outside. So why would they tell me that he's not saying that?
And the truth was told. The only path to truth was a DNA test's impartial scientific result. The DNA test results were in. The courtroom held its breath as the judge revealed the answer.
Mr. Washington, you are not the father.
Thank you. Now have a great day with your life and your baby. She's beautiful, by the way.
He's not the father.
What began as a quiet claim by Ms. Mitchell quickly transformed into a high-stakes drama. At the center of the storm was Ms. Mitchell herself, a young woman who once trusted her childhood sweetheart, now facing the reality that the man she loved might be denying responsibility for the daughter she bore.
Ms. Mitchell, you are here in the court today because you claim your childhood sweetheart stole your virginity, got you pregnant, and is now denying paternity of your 2-month-old daughter, Rylan.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Mitchell had always maintained that her intimate encounter with Mr. Robinson, her longtime lover, had changed everything. Yet, across the room, Mr. Robinson wasn't buying it. Why? Because, according to him, there were 4 other possible fathers.
And Mr. Robinson, in your defense, you claim you doubt paternity because after Ms. Mitchell told you she was pregnant, you found out she was sleeping with 4 other men.
Yes, Your Honor.
She recalled how he had once pressured her to take a step she wasn't ready for, a moment that, in retrospect, had set in motion a wave of events leading to her pregnancy. Yet, Mr. Robinson insisted that their relationship had been a one-time, unprotected hookup. A fleeting moment rather than a lifelong commitment.
Mitchell, explain to the court, how did you get yourself in this messy situation?
Well, Your Honor, we hung out a few times and he pressured me to have sex with him, and I said I wasn't ready yet. And so then I was hanging out at these apartment complexes and we hooked up and had sex. I lost my virginity and I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks later.
What made the situation even more explosive was the revelation that, shortly after Ms. Mitchell informed him of her pregnancy, whispers began circulating that she had been involved with 4 other men during the period of conception. Ms. Mitchell was furious. She demanded to know where these rumors had started.
Your Honor, she had one of her friends she grew up with inboxed me and her on Facebook and said, "I'm not trying to start no drama. I thought I'd let you know that she had sex with 4 other guys, okay?"
But there was one thing she did know. When she gave birth, Mr. Robinson was nowhere to be found. Oh, but he had an explanation for that too. According to him, the reason he wasn't there for his daughter's birth was that he was in jail.
So let's fast forward to the birth. You have the baby. Is Mr. Robinson with you?
No, but his sister was.
His sister came.
Yes, I sent my sister, Your
So he
Honor.
wasn't at the, you sent her.
Yes, because I had got arrested the night of, I'm not gonna lie, I'll be 100% honest with you, Your Honor. So I said, Erica, I said, will you do me a favor? She said, what, bub? I said, will you make sure you go to the hospital for me?
Ms. Mitchell's mother wasn't letting that slide. She stood up, armed with receipts of her own, a paper, a date, cold, hard proof. Turns out that Mr. Robinson wasn't arrested until 2 days after the baby was born. So where was he on the day of the birth? Nowhere to be found.
I want to hear from her now. Please step up.
My name's Diana Mitchell, and this is my daughter. And Hope was raised better than to lay around sleeping with men. I have no clue where they come up with that. No clue whatsoever where they come up with 4 men.
Mr. Robinson also came with his own witness. And it didn't take long before the case turned into a shouting match. Mr. Robinson and his witness claimed Ms. Mitchell is immature and detailed heated exchanges and moments of raw confrontation.
You were arrested on May 9th.
Your Honor, no. I was arrested 5/8 of 2014. In the morning.
Okay,
in
but
the
she was
morning,
born on
at
the
10
7th.
o'clock on the morning, I was arrested, okay? And that was the day the file, I have more than just one charge that they picked me up on.
The back and forth was exhausting. Accusations flung across the room, voices rising, tempers flaring, and then the judge had had enough. She slammed the courtroom back into order, reminding them all that none of this drama mattered. Not the Facebook gossip, not the he said she said, not even their childish back and forth. What mattered was the innocent little girl caught in the middle.
Who cares?
Yeah, nobody cares about that.
Who cares? This is just getting ridiculous. You all in this Facebook and this, if you all would have just stayed on Facebook instead of laying down in the bed with no protection, we wouldn't be here. You all want to talk about Facebook all day.
The turning point came when the DNA test results were finally presented. The room tensed. Ms. Mitchell held her breath, waiting for justice. Mr. Robinson stood still, ready to confirm his doubts. Their witnesses watched with quiet anxiety.
Mr. Robinson, you are the father.
Mr. Patterson stood firm, his jaw tight, his eyes locked onto the woman he once trusted. He wasn't just here to clear his name. He was here to defend the bond he had built with a little boy he had called his own for 4 years.
Mr. Patterson, you opened your case today to prove that you are 4-year-old DeMarcus Patterson Jr.'s biological father. You named him and have cared for your junior since birth and are furious the defendant now claims another man is his father.
Ms. Knight, on the other hand, looked composed, but the slight twitch in her fingers gave her away. She had a secret, one that could shatter everything. And she knew that once the truth was out, there would be no going back.
Ms. Knight, you testify that even though your son has Mr. Patterson's name, it does not change the fact that you are unsure he is DeMarcus Jr.'s biological father and another man could be. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Patterson had done everything a father should do. He was there when DeMarcus Jr. took his first breath. He gave him his name, rocked him to sleep, and played the role of a proud father. And now, the woman he had once loved was trying to rip that all away, claiming that another man could be the boy's real father.
Mr. Patterson, you testify you've been there since day one. Please explain.
I've been there since birth, since he came out the womb, since he entered this world. When the doctor first, held him up and finally gave him to him, I witnessed him just completely quit crying and looked me dead in my eyes, and that's when, at that moment I knew.
Ms. Knight didn't deny it. In fact, she admitted outright that she had told Patterson from the beginning there was a chance he wasn't the father. But back then, wrapped up in his love for her and the excitement of impending fatherhood, Patterson had dismissed the doubts. He had believed what he wanted to believe. Now, standing before the judge, he realized just how much of a mistake that might have been.
When I got pregnant, that there was a possibility that I could be pregnant by someone else.
So you were honest from the start?
From the beginning, yes.
Do you remember this conversation, Mr. Patterson?
Yes, Your Honor, in a way. When she first told me she was pregnant, that's when we was like, I guess you could say doing the house hopping thing, because like in order—
Doing the what?
The house hopping thing, because when she moved out of her parents' house, she ain't had nowhere to go, so let her live there too.
But what made matters worse was how it all happened. Patterson thought they were solid until he found out she had left him for another man, just vanished. No call, no explanation, for 2 whole months. By the time she resurfaced, she had news. She was pregnant, and there was a possibility that the baby wasn't his. But Patterson, desperate to keep his family together, had welcomed her back anyway. He had chosen to ignore the nagging feeling in his gut, to trust that love would smooth out the rough edges of their past.
You're saying she just left the house and you didn't hear from her for a month or two?
Yeah, I was supposed to pick up from work, but my grandma made me feel worse about it because she was like, she knew she was too fast for me anyways, but going by what
So,
we
Ms.
both
Knight, where did you go? What is going on here?
I decided to leave because I wasn't over the fact that he cheated on me with this female.
When their son was born, all doubts had vanished. The moment he held that tiny, fragile life in his hands, he had felt it. A connection so deep, so undeniable, that the truth seemed irrelevant. He had signed the birth certificate, given the baby his name, and sworn to be his father, no matter what.
Time to go to the hospital. He hopped up, all right, let's do this. So we was in the hospital that whole day, had the baby. He didn't get to cut the umbilical cord because the doctor took it upon himself to cut it.
Yeah, he did
But
do that.
that was it. When he had the baby, DeMarcus looked over, said, that's my baby. We ain't naming him no Christian. We naming him DeMarcus Patterson.
Now, 4 years later, Ms. Knight had the audacity to turn around and question what had already been sealed in Patterson's heart. And worse, she had named a possible second contender, the mysterious Mr. Sigler.
He's 4 now.
He's 4
Right.
now, so I look at
And
it
the
now.
conversation about DNA tests, this is not the first time I brought it up. I done set appointments. No one wants to help me with half the payment.
I help you with that. Now, it's just, I know you
When?
evil. If they say that I don't get to take my name off or have a DNA test, you'll put me on child support if you could. I'm
Look,
being real.
you
I
know
take care
it's
of
a
mine. You know
possibility
I
that
would.
you're the father.
In a twist that deepened the drama, Mr. Sigler stepped forward as a witness who not only confirmed his own connection to the events, but also claimed a paternal bond with the child. His account was equally compelling. He recalled when he had been there during a critical moment when Ms. Knight first learned she was pregnant. His testimony suggested that his involvement had been more than a fleeting encounter. It had been a genuine moment of intimacy that could have resulted in fatherhood.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe you are DeMarcus Jr.'s biological father?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor.
You do?
Yes, Your Honor.
Why do you believe that?
All right, in the midst of me and Kaylin having dealings or intimacy, I was the one who told her she was pregnant. And when I told her she was pregnant, she say, well, if you feel like that, take me to the clinic. So I did.
But love doesn't erase biology, and the court doesn't deal with emotions. It deals with facts. As the moment of truth arrived, the judge held the results in her hands. Patterson stood frozen, his heart pounding. Ms. Knight shifted uneasily, as if she suddenly wasn't so sure she wanted to hear what was coming next.
The biological father is Mr. Sigler.
This was a mess, pure, unfiltered chaos in the courtroom. It all started with Mr. Pitchford Kendricks, a man determined to prove he was the biological father of baby Javier. He stood in court with a carefully prepared basket of baby essentials, convinced that today was the day he would claim his son.
Mr. Pitchford Kendricks, you opened your case to prove that you are the biological father of the defendant's 2-month-old son, Javier. You claim she is denying paternity only because she wants to be with another man and needs him to be the father.
But across from him, Ms. Saavedra stood unmoved. She wasn't buying his claim, not for a second. At the heart of the matter was a 2-month-old baby, Javier, whose biological father was up for determination, and the stakes could not have been higher.
Ms. Saavedra, you admit you allowed 2 men into your bed at the same time, but you are convinced that Mr. Pitchford Kendricks is not Javier's biological father. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Pitchford Kendricks started with determination etched on his face. Growing up without a father in the tough streets of Detroit, he had long vowed to break the cycle of abandonment. Now, armed with the hope of finally being a father himself, he claimed that he was Javier's biological parent. His case was more than just a legal battle. It was a deeply personal crusade to prove that he could be the guiding light his own upbringing had lacked.
Proving paternity is extremely important to you.
Yes,
is that
Your Honor.
correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please explain.
Well, Your Honor, I grew up in the streets of Detroit, no dad in my life, and I just want to make sure that my son doesn't have to grow up like I did. And
That's a beautiful basket there. You brought that for your son once you prove your case?
Yes, Your Honor.
She openly admitted that 2 men had shared her bed during the time of conception. Yes, 2. But she was absolutely certain Mr. Pitchford Kendricks was not the father. His presence in her life, she argued, was nothing more than a regrettable mistake, one she had already moved past. Then came the revelations that made jaws drop.
Me and Greg met each other through he was dating a roommate of mine. And he came over one day. We did end up hitting it off, and we was cool. Ended up having sex.
Okay, that's Three's Company, right? Y'all too young to know that show.
Speaking of Three's Company.
Yes, that's what I shouted too. This wasn't a simple case of a one-night stand or a fleeting romance. No. This was a decade-long entanglement that spiraled into something far more complicated. It turned out that Mr. Pitchford Kendricks had originally been involved with Ms. Saavedra's roommate. From there, things took a bizarre turn. He introduced Ms. Saavedra to his cousin, and soon after, a love triangle, or rather a love mess, was born. But hold on, because it gets even messier.
And we became friends. You know, I was still kind of talking to her friend. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh, you still with the friend?
yeah.
Right.
After that, you know, I hooked her up. She asked me, did I know anybody else, you know what I'm saying, that she could hook up with.
So
we could
who
go
did you hook her up with?
Well, a half cousin of mine.
According to Mr. Pitchford Kendricks, he played by a certain set of rules. During the threesomes, he used protection, out of respect for Maurice, because in his mind, that was the respectful thing to do. Then came that night. Maurice was out with another woman, and Ms. Saavedra wasn't happy. Furious, humiliated, and seeking revenge, she called Mr. Pitchford Kendricks over. This time, there was no protection, no rules, just raw emotions and a desire to even the score. And now, here they were.
When they have their little disputes or whatever, he be cheating and all that, she called me crying and stuff. And you know, I had to go over there and kind of help her cheer up and stuff, you know.
So you're saying you did the threesomes, but then you also would go over and sleep with her by yourself?
While he was at work.
Mr. Pitchford Kendricks was convinced this was the night Javier was conceived. Ms. Saavedra? She dismissed it entirely. According to her, the timing didn't add up. She conceived in May, she argued, and by then, her involvement with Mr. Pitchford Kendricks was over, but he wasn't buying it.
At the times we had threesomes, I was trying to respect him, you know what I'm saying? So, and wear a condom, but I kind of liked her, you know, from the first time I had seen her and stuff, so.
But
That
Oh,
night-
wait, so what are you saying? So when you had the threesomes with your cousin and her, you would wear a condom?
Yeah, for respect for
Because
him.
that's respect.
Yeah.
What do Maurice think? Well, in a statement to the court, Maurice didn't find the whole situation funny. He felt cheated and used, but he agrees with Mr. Pitchford Kendricks. The child isn't his. Despite his anger, Mr. Pitchford Kendricks felt no guilt.
We have a statement from
Maurice.
your cousin Maurice.
Your Honor, he even thought I was
It says, last year Mercedes and I got into it because she thought I was having sex with another woman, which I wasn't. In retaliation, she had sex with my cousin Greg with no rubber. Shortly after, she comes up pregnant. I found out that they had been having sex behind my back for years. Since the dirty mess has come to light, I don't think her son is mine. He looks like Greg.
As the tension reached its peak, the judge had heard enough. It was time for answers. The DNA results were in. The courtroom held its breath. Mr. Pitchford Kendricks sat forward, gripping the edges of his podium. Ms. Saavedra folded her arms, confident in her stance. The judge read the results.
Mr. Pitchford Kendricks, you are not the father.
The courtroom was thick with tension. On one side stood Ms. Hawthorne, furious and determined, her eyes locked on the man she once called her high school sweetheart, but whose name has now changed to deadbeat.
Ms. Hawthorne, you are here today because you say your high school sweetheart, Mr. Brown, is a smooth-talking deadbeat who got you pregnant 3 years ago and is now denying your baby. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
On the other side, Mr. Brown stood defiant, shaking his head like he wanted to be anywhere but there. He maintained that even though the two had shared an intimate moment, the circumstances were far from clear. Still, he wanted to prove that the accusations against him were untrue.
Mr. Brown, you say Ms. Hawthorne is a desperate liar who will say and do anything in order to have a family with you. You claim there is no way you could have fathered her child, and you intend to prove that today. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
She claimed that the man she once adored abandoned his responsibilities after their brief, intense encounter years ago, leaving her to raise their 2-year-old son, Chase, alone. With her reputation on the line and financial demands mounting, she demanded justice in a case that had quickly evolved from personal betrayal to a public show.
Why do you say Mr. Brown is a deadbeat?
He doesn't do anything for Chase. He doesn't come see him, anything.
And that makes you so angry
Yes.
because you feel like he's not honoring his responsibility.
Right. And plus, I grew up without a father.
But Mr. Brown wasn't having it. He swore up and down that there was no way the child could be his. According to him, this was all part of an elaborate scheme, one fueled by desperation and obsession. Ms. Hawthorne, she was just a woman who wanted a family with him so badly that she'd stop at nothing. But Ms. Hawthorne had her own version of the story, and it was about to get messy.
Hawthorne says you acting like a deadbeat. Why?
Your Honor, this baby isn't mine. I desperately believe that she's emotionally attached to me, and she desperately wants to have a family with me.
It's not true because me and DeAndre, we were in a relationship. We were high school sweethearts. You know, I was all about him.
She had given everything to this man. They started young, their love budding through the screens of their phones, a classic online romance that somehow found its way into real life. She lost her virginity to him, trusted him, built dreams around him, and then he cheated, repeatedly. The heartbreak was unbearable, but even after it all, they still found themselves entangled in each other's lives, and that's when that night in the backseat happened.
It was in December 9th of 2015.
You all reconnect, or did you get back together? What happened?
So I was pretty much leaving my significant other. I was coming over to talk to Bria about us not seeing each other anymore. So we was in the car and we ended up getting into a heated moment, and both of us started kissing and ended up having sex in the back seat.
Now, 3 years later, Mr. Brown stood in front of a judge, denying it all. His defense? A weak one at best. He claimed they were only together once, and that it was a farewell, not a rekindling. He didn't even finish the act. The audience scoffed. The judge raised an eyebrow. Even he had to know how ridiculous that sounded. But Mr. Brown wasn't done making things worse for himself.
So you say you didn't complete the act, and so therefore you can't be Chase's biological father.
Correct, because before I came to her, I had sex with my girlfriend.
What? Okay. You had sex with your girlfriend before you came to see Miss Hawthorne?
Correct, Your Honor.
It doesn't make any kind of sense to me either. And just when it seemed like the courtroom had heard it all, another twist surfaced. Ms. Hawthorne had a male roommate during the time of conception. Mr. Brown jumped on it, but Ms. Hawthorne shut that down quickly.
Mr. Brown,
Yeah, sure.
you say it's a shady situation.
Correct.
But you, the #1 shade tree, because you had sex with your girlfriend, then came there and had sex with Ms. Hawthorne.
On the other hand, Mr. Brown's defense was riddled with inconsistencies that only amplified the drama. His story was further undermined by evidence brought in by Ms. Hawthorne's mom. The text suggests that Mr. Brown accepts that he is the father.
Mom, Ms. Hawthorne, when you testify, you seem to say that Mr. Brown is pretty much, he's indicated to you that he knows he's the father, that he believes he's the father.
Right, he sent a
through
text
text.
to me. Right.
How?
He sent a December the 4th, I text him and asked him, I said, Bria's not working. Can you get something for the baby? And he said, I don't have the money now. I said, well, I guess Chase won't have a Christmas.
The courtroom was a pressure cooker of emotions as Ms. Hawthorne and Mr. Brown traded barbs about their past. As the heated debate raged on, the judge grew increasingly exasperated by the conflicting accounts. There is only one way to solve this. Long-awaited DNA test results were presented.
Mr. Brown, you are not the father.
Ms. Johnson was defiant. She swore up and down that there was no doubt Mr. Lewis was 6-month-old baby Josiah's father. The only reason he was hesitating, she argued, was because he had let gossip cloud his judgment.
Ms. Johnson, you claim you have no doubts whatsoever that Mr. Lewis is the father of your 6-month-old daughter, Josiah. You say the only reason he doubts paternity is because he heard false rumors.
Her certainty, however, was met with fierce opposition. Mr. Lewis, accompanied by his own mother, maintained that his doubts about being Josiah's father were not the result of unfounded rumors, but stemmed from disturbing claims made by an ex-boyfriend of Ms. Johnson's. According to those whispers, there was a possibility, however remote, that another man could be the biological father.
Now, Mr. Lewis, you and your mother say it's not only the rumors that have caused you to doubt, but also an ex-boyfriend of Ms. Johnson's who claims he might also be the baby's biological father.
The origins of the issue date back to simpler times. Ms. Johnson recalled how her and Mr. Lewis's paths had first crossed during their school days, only to diverge and later reconnect through social media after she ended a previous relationship. Their rekindled friendship quickly blossomed into romance. Just 1 month into their renewed closeness, Ms. Johnson discovered she was pregnant. In her heart, she believed that their union was meant to create a family, and she boldly declared that the child was his.
All started, me and Mr. Lewis was friends back in middle school, and then we stopped talking for a while. And then we met up again through Facebook. I had broke up with my ex, and then me and Mr. Lewis started dating in March of 2013, and I found out that I was pregnant.
As the months passed, doubts began to grow. Mr. Lewis's initial excitement gave way to confusion when his mother received unsettling reports. They claimed that Ms. Johnson's ex-boyfriend had persistently claimed that he might be the father, and more shockingly, some of Ms. Johnson's relatives echoed these sentiments.
When did the doubt come in?
The doubt came in when I spoke with one of Ms. Johnson's family members. That's when the doubt came in.
Really? From her family member?
From one of her family members.
What did they say?
She had told me that my son could be the father, and she also said there could be others that could be the father.
When Mr. Lewis found out that Ms. Johnson was pregnant, he had been present. He went to the hospital with her and all. But then when it was time to have the baby, Ms. Johnson turned into a different person.
He was aware of. Made sure he got there. After she had the baby, he found out through the relative that she had the baby. She had already had the baby maybe 3 days when we found out.
Wait a minute. So you say you had no doubt that he was the father of your child, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, my jaw dropped to the floor too. That is some cruel and unusual punishment. Instead of clearing Mr. Lewis's doubts, she decided to punish him for it. But But that wasn't all. Ms. Lewis had posted about her son being a father on social media. That's when things took a wild turn. Out of nowhere, the ex-boyfriend slid into her inbox, demanding she call him immediately. And when she did, his words left her shaken.
I made a status on a social network. The ex contacted me.
Wait, what did the status say?
It was something like in reference of my son, finding out that he's a father, to now finding out that he may not be the father, it could be somebody else's. So the ex saw my status and sent me a message. And come to find out, I know the ex.
He wasn't just some bitter ex trying to stir up drama. No, he claimed she told him he was the father. He believed he was the father. And the proof? Well, she was living with him. And a quick scroll through his social media revealed a series of damning photos of him proudly holding baby Josiah, captioning them with a single word, Daddy. Mr. Lewis was furious. He had trusted her. But now, it looked like he'd been played for a fool.
And he was on the network holding the baby, saying I'm daddy, with pictures. And I've spoken with him verbally more than once where he was, yeah, I'm the daddy. So he was like, I don't know what's going on.
The courtroom drama escalated when evidence emerged about a three-way phone conversation. Mr. Lewis recalled overhearing a conversation where Ms. Johnson admitted not knowing who the biological father is, even as Ms. Johnson repeatedly claimed that Mr. Lewis was the only man who could be Josiah's father. The murmurings of alternative possibilities had brought doubt that was almost impossible to dispel.
One day, I think it was in March, we had a three-way conversation. She didn't know I was on the phone, and I actually heard her. He asked her who the father between me and Derek, and I heard her say, I don't know.
Okay, let me hear that again. You were on the phone?
Yes, she had me on mute.
This wasn't just about rumors anymore. It was about control. Ms. Johnson had been willing to keep a man away from his child just to make a point. But had she miscalculated? Because if that DNA test came back not in her favor, she'd have a different problem. The moment of truth had arrived.
Mr. Lewis, you are Josiah's father.